Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Hi, I'm Terry Long.
And I'm Jeremy Eden, and we are the co-CEOs of Harvest Earnings.
Welcome to the Elephant in the Boardroom.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Jeremy.
How are you?
Great. So it's a quotation marathon podcast.
Yes. We love our quotations. We have many favorite ones. I don't know if you can have many favorites, colloquially or not.
We didn't say most favorite.
All one's children's are one's favorites. Okay, maybe we should move on to the topic. I am going to start with one of ours or mine. John Maynard Keynes once said, "It's better to be roughly right than precisely wrong." And we love this quote because there's so many environments we've gone into where what goes on is always referred to as analysis paralysis. People just sharpening their pencil and going out to the third decimal point and collecting all these numbers and not focusing on what's the crucial thing that they need to know that, frankly, they could be roughly analytic about and get to the right answer.
So how many digits of pi can you go out to?
Not very many. Probably only about 7 or 8.
For me.
But many people can go out hundreds from memory.
Yeah, well, that's weird.
And I remember we were at a client describing how the first part of the process was going to require a lot of back of the envelope estimating in order to decide whether something was worth more effort in terms of analysis. And at the break, one of the guys came up and said, "This process is never going to work here because any number you say and show the executive team, particularly the CEO, will be remembered forever. And so we all have to make sure that every number we ever use is precise." And we assured him the CEO is on board with what we were doing. And of course, they were. So an example.
It reminds me of when we were told there was no way that the steering committee would make decisions without PowerPoint.
Yes. You had to go running up to try to find the CEO, who is not there, but the CFO came down and said, no PowerPoints, folks. An example of this is stage gating, which is this really important concept of just put a little time and effort into something to analyze it roughly, and you may discover that the numbers are so bad that it's not worth figuring out anymore. When we do one of these projects where maybe there's hundreds of ideas that need to be costed, we make the first stage a very rough costing, and we were told somewhere, well, we could probably cost 4 or 5 in the next month. And we needed hundreds costed in the next month. And it created quite the to-do. And then they sort of got on the program and realized, of course, back of the envelope, they could do very quickly. And that took those hundreds of possible things down to a very small number that really needed detailed costing. But they were going to treat all those things the same. So we are against analysis paralysis, and we are against being precise about a number that's not helpful.
Yeah, it's precisely wrong. But I do have to interject with one of my favorite T-shirt slogans from college. Okay. So for a brief shining moment in time, I was an economics major, and we had T-shirts that said, "Keynesian Track Club, in the long run, we're all dead." Look it up, people. Okay, so should we...
That's why economics is called the dismal science.
Yeah, there you go. And that's why I switched to finance. Anyway, should we move on to our second quote for the day?
Yeah, we shall.
Okay, this one comes direct from Mark Twain. Bonus points if you can tell me his real name. Yes? Is that somebody else here?
Yeah, I thought our listeners would get bonus points which they are avidly collecting and are worth, when you reach enough of them, nothing. Samuel Clemens.
Very good. Even though we talked about it an hour ago, so you really don't get bonus points.
I don't.
So this quote, this quote is, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." So I think we've talked about this before, but the most egregious case of this in a project was when we were working with 30 factories and they were not coming up with ideas. And normally factories come up with gobs of ideas. And so finally we were like, what is going on? How can this be happening? And somebody finally fessed up, well, we need to hit an IRR on any investment of 55%. And of course, that's a very high hurdle. And we thought that can't possibly be true. And it turned out it, in fact, was not. It had been put in place for one factory that was on the sales block that, it was going to be sold within a year or so. So it made sense for that factory that any dollar spent had to have a very fast return, but not for the other 29 factories. So once that was cleared up, then the floodgates opened.
Sure about it, right? It was just they were sure.
Yeah. And we've
So
gobs of examples, of course.
I'm sorry?
We have gobs of these examples. That's just
absolutely.
one that's extreme.
So one other one is we were at a utility, and there were these ideas that could have come up about closing offices where people paid their bills. Now, these regulated industry, the Public Utility Commission required these bill-paying offices. And so they would not put in any ideas having to do with this because they knew that the CEO would never approve them because his hands were tied. And finally, we brought this up with him, and he told everybody, please bring these ideas to me and others like them. Because if I have enough of these ideas, then when I'm negotiating with the Public Utility Commission, I'm not going to win them all. But the more I have and the more economic sense I can show them these ideas would yield to ratepayers, the more I'm going to win some. So don't use your belief that I'm against these things to stop you from offering them up.
Yep, it's a good one. So our next quote, yes, we attribute to you, even though I did edit it.
We did.
So I of course think we have many smart things to say. So I want us to come up with a quote. So I said, come up with a quote, and you did, and it's great. And here's two. I'm gonna throw out two options, and people, if you listen, write in the comments which one you prefer. They both mean the same thing, but slightly different wording. So here's the first one. First option. People fear change too much and fear maintaining the status quo too little. That's option one. Option two. People fear change, but forget to fear the status quo. Okay, so those are the two options. But I mean, obviously, the point is that people are very nervous about making a change and fear, what the bad things that will happen because of the change. There's going to be some consequence. Maybe I know what it is. Maybe I don't know what it is. But that change, it's very commonly held belief that people fear change. Although you always point out people only fear some change. They don't fear the change when they get promoted. Well, that's not true. Some people, I'm sure, fear a promotion, but they don't fear the raise. That's a
No, that'll change my lifestyle, please.
yeah, that's too scary. But anyway, people do fear change. But so people then let inertia take over, and they stay in a job they hate. They stay in a relationship that they shouldn't because they know it's what's the expression? It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't, I guess.
Yeah.
But we see this all the time with executive teams. They hang on to what they've got because changing seems.
Yeah, and somehow we get inured to the same level of risk or greater risk of something we're doing now than something unknown. And I remember a CFO who was the opposite of this and told the assembled 200 or 300 executives that were about to embark on this effort. He said, if we don't change, this is all going to end in tears. But, that was rare because right then they had been just celebrated record profits and things seemed great. And it took an unusual person to go, we've reached the top of the mountain. You know what happens? You start going.
Yeah. But then we did have a CEO who did turn out to be absolutely fantastic, who went the other direction. At the beginning of one of our projects, basically put a cap on the number and said, you know what, if we come up with ideas that are worth more than that cap, that's going to be too much. We won't be able to absorb that change. It's going to cut into muscle. I just don't believe that we can go beyond that number. But then when he saw the ideas, which more than doubled that number, there was no idea that he could say, oh, well, this one doesn't make sense. This one doesn't make sense. So he got over it. But his initial attitude was, no, that can't be. This is the change I'm willing to accept. And that's it. No more.
And in fact, going back to Mark Twain, he had this revelation because he was sure of something. And everybody knew that he felt that way and responded that way. And then when he discovered that what he knew for sure just wasn't so, he really got on board in a big way to advocate making all these changes.
Yeah.
Okay, so should I do the last one?
Yes, please.
So the last one is one that's really core for us, and which I'm sure we've mentioned before, which is if only HP, this is the former CEO of HP said, if only HP knew what HP knows, we'd be 3 times more productive. Kind of like the CEO we were just talking about. Now, in that case, it was double more productive than he expected. And it's this idea that there's all this knowledge resident in disparate places within a company. And because it's not known, it's not really solicited and used. But when it is solicited and when it is used, it can be very productive. And a great example of this was we were working for a company that was in the copying business, essentially printing, I should say, the printing business. And they had industrial strength printers with these huge cartridges of ink. And when that cartridge was empty, you had to send it back to the company, and they sent you a new cartridge filled up with ink. And those new cartridges were expensive. It was like, the razor was free, but the razor blades were, expensive. And because this company was embarking on, does anybody have any ideas about anything we can do? There's this engineer in the back office who said, yeah, it appears that those lids are totally permanent and that we can't open them. But actually, I figured out a way to open the lid, put in cheap new ink, same ink that you get with the refill. Cheap meaning it was low cost to buy in volume. And then I know how to reseal the cartridge. I can use it again. Save them a ton of money. Nobody had any idea, really, other than his little department, who even this engineer was, came to the attention of the CEO through this. Saved them a ton of money. And it turned out it wasn't breaching any contractual obligations, because it's pretty clear that the company, the vendor, never put in their contract you couldn't do this, because they never in their wildest dreams thought anybody would try or figure out how to do this. And so it was a good example of one of the many, many, many things that this company knew and had known for years, but didn't know that they knew.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked before about how we absolutely hate the label of management consulting. And when we try and explain why, in fact, we are completely different than that label implies, we always, well, maybe not always, but often lead with this quote. And boy, people get it. People get it quickly. It's common sense, really. It's just not common sense that's commonly applied. Who said that? That's another quote. Henry Ford, maybe?
No.
Something, common things uncommonly well?
H.J. Heinz.
Well, I know. I'd swear I saw Henry Ford recently. I thought it was Henry.
I thought he's been dead for years.
Ha, ha, ha. I thought it was Henry Heinz, too. But so maybe it is. But anyway, do common things uncommonly well.
Right.
But it is commonly known that the people closest to the work are the ones who know the problems and therefore are in the best positions to come up with solutions.
And this is something that, anybody, both in their personal life and in their work life, can sort of put into action. Because if they have people reporting to them, or they are in an environment where they're with people who don't seem to be being solicited but would know most about something, you can ask them and encourage them and find out what they know.
Yeah.
If you're in that position.
Yep. So if only HP knew what HP knows, we'd be 3 times more productive. And it plays out everywhere we go. I don't know. Maybe we have time for one more quote.
Okay. Which one would you like?
I always kind of love, well, we could tell one of just a pure funny one. At least you and I think it's funny. Our team does not. By the comedian Stephen Wright, that we sometimes use when we are working with teams that are responsible for procuring stuff for companies. And the quote, one-liner is, I'll try and deliver it as Stephen Wright. I bought batteries the other day. but they weren't included, so I had to buy them again. Yeah, the entire rest of our team thinks this is a stupid line.
Yeah.
They don't get it. It cracks us up. But the point being, well, do you want to discuss the point?
Well, at least one point is that often when people are buying things, they don't exactly know what they're buying, or they don't know why they're buying those things, because they're just being given an order of things to buy by the person who wants to use them, and they're not really challenging back.
I don't think that's the point.
Okay, what's the point?
That is a point that we use with procurement teams for sure, looking at the specs. But I think the point of this funny one-liner is that oftentimes there are things in a contract with your vendor that says they're supposed to be providing that you don't get. So there's a lot of fine print that, well, maybe you're supposed to be getting this service. Maybe you're supposed to be getting same day delivery of whatever, and you're not. So that, be very careful to make sure that you're getting what you paid for. And then if you don't value that, maybe you don't need batteries, or you only need double A's and not triple A's, but you're paying for it all. So
excellent.
That's all I got on that.
Okay, well.
More quotes in a future podcast, because we got a million of them.
I would like to do it's not really a quote, but that's all, folks, but I don't know how to do the voice. So.
Yeah, that's all, folks.
I'm no Mel Blanc. Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.